Sandy Says Read. Welcome to the channel, you guys. Tonight we are going to do a review and discussion of Under the Dragon Moon. This is the first book in the Rex Draconis series by Richard Knaak. I'm also going to discuss just very briefly, just the very beginning of the second book in the series, Lords of the Dragon Moon. Very briefly, because we're going to focus on the first book in the series first. All right, so here's my notes, you guys. The specs. Under the Dragon Moon, published in 2017 by Hydra Publications. This is 163 pages. And let's do a shout out for the artist who did this map. Patrick Pullen is the artist who drew Tiburos. Hopefully I'm saying that right, Tiburos. Here we go. And I want to point out most of our action is going to be taking place in Arian, right here. The story begins with a battle taking place between the Minotaur and the Weir. And when the Minotaur get away from this battle, barely, they get away on their ship and they come away from an island and they make port in Arian. When they're doing that, though, one of our main characters, Wrath, he's a Minotaur and he's become captain now. I think he became captain by default, but he's captain and he sees something aboard their ship. And that something that he sees was in exile on that island where the battle was taking place. And so his ship helps release something that should not have been released. So mayhem ensues. All right, then the second book in the series we have here, Lords of the Dragon Moon. It was published in 2018 by Hydra Publications. It's 252 pages. This one begins with a druid. His name is Wellen, and I think I'm in love with him. This is a great beginning to a book. I dove right into this. I immediately became concerned about Wellen and how he was going to get away from the items plaguing him. He's a shapeshifter. He's a druid, but he can shapeshift. And there are two different shapes that he shifts into in this first chapter. And I was with him all the way. I'm like, dude, I want you to survive this. And in chapter 2, we see that, yes, this book does pick up where book 1 left off. So let's talk about book 1. I've made just a ton of notes, you guys. But I want to begin with a section in here that kind of describes what our dragon moon is, and it's just freaking poetry. I mean, Richard did an awesome job with this. So, I like to give you guys a flavor when I read some of these things for you. So let me share this with you. The shatter unveiled itself in all its monstrous glory. Huge fragments of blazing rock poised in the evening sky, growing more imposing as the last vestiges of daylight faded. Hundreds of them turning the world below into a nightmare. Once there had been, of course, the three moons, Silver Hume, Crimson Newen, and Shadowy Drac. Drac, the moon that could only be seen when it passed before the others, so the tales said. Drac, Rex Draconis, King of Dragons, Lord of Leviathans. The name and title were still used by most folk, especially in whispers. No one had even seen a dragon since the ogre migrations 250 years ago, and stories said that one had been mad of mind. Isn't that awesome? It kind of gives you little shivers, right? I liked that very much. That was great. But this shatter that takes place, this changing of the moon that takes place, is a big, huge event. And because it's taking place, these two opposing dragon-like spirits, the Fafnir and the Afafnir, are able to use their power more than if the shatter was not taking place. I guess more dangerous things can happen during the shatter, and everyone knows it, and everyone's a little worried about it, and it just adds an extra element of suspense. That's very well done. Okay, what else do I need to tell you guys? There are a ton of characters in this novel. There are a bunch of characters because there's a bunch of creatures. I wrote down a list of the different types of creatures that we do see actively taking part in the journey, the quest, the campaign. We've got Minotaurs and Weir. I've mentioned them. there's a creature called a Quillam, which I thought was just a very intriguing little character. Her name is Hilna, and I get the impression that she's very small, like dwarf size small, and she's a thief. She's quick. She can like scoot in and out of things without you realizing that she's there. She moves so fast that you don't realize you've seen something until she's already gone, and you kind of wonder, did your eyes play a trick on you? She's that kind of a creature. And she also has a defense mechanism about her, where if you grab hold of her arm or you try to catch her, and you get a hold of her, she's got some like quills under her skin that will pop up and stab you. She can get away then. So yeah, that's a very interesting little creature. I enjoyed that creature very much. Then there are humans, of course. We've got humans. There are Knights of the Grey Hand in this book. One of them is Eric Constantine, and he's one of our main characters. And then we have elves, and one of my favorite characters in the whole book, her name is Caldara, and she's like a full elf, and she like has some visions, and she sees a person who has like two faces to him, and she wants to come into the campaign and assist because of this person. She thinks that she's told to come and help this person, so she's gonna come help. Then we have dwarves, and there's one dwarf in particular. His name is Esk, and he and Hilna sort of like work off of one another. You know, Hilna is assisting him. He seems like one of those characters that he might have dementia, or he might just be, I think he has dementia, but he's building a machine that is quite important to our story. And there are wizards. The main wizard in this story is named Amble. Let's see. Then Richard does mention sorcerers, druids, necromancers, and ogres. You know, we just mentioned the ogre war there, and then the druids are mentioned, and then we have a druid as our main character in the second book. I hope he's going to be the main character. I want to see him survive. All right. Let's see. I mentioned Caldara. I really like her. She's my favorite. I mentioned Eric, Eric Constantine, the soldier. There is a scene. Let's see if I've got it. Oh, have I got it for you here? Where Caldara is, she's looking over this area where people have been slaughtered or taken, or something has happened to them, and she sees Eric, or she witnesses him. I'll just read it for you, okay? Because I thought Richard did an awesome job with this, because he's not saying, now she sees Eric do this, but he's showing us what's happening. So this is Caldara looking at Eric. It was he, in fact, who drew her attention to a depression in the ground by the northern wall. The knight, Eric, she thought she'd heard Lord Justinio call him, paused to look at the spot, as if startled by something there. However, after a moment, he moved on. And I made a note in the margin here, because I just thought it was great that she's noticing Eric picking up on items around this area. Like, Eric is in tune to what's going on. And I thought it was the Quillam that he was noticing, because she moves so fast. But there's other stuff happening there. There's a lot of intrigue. There are a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of motion and action and twists and turns. The Fafnir and the Afafnir, which are these two dragon spirits in this novel, they will take control of characters. They will get into their minds and take control of them. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, who can we trust? Who can we not trust? So there's a lot of that in this book. You got to pay attention and stay with the story when you're reading this book. Okay, and then page 125, something for you on page 125. We have an item Richard put in here that I wanted to highlight because I loved it. It says, to the surprise of the Minotaur and the knights, Codon dipped his head, then muttered, "What is it you wish of me?" Now this is one of the spirits deciding he's going to side with the people who are the enemy of his enemy. And I wrote here, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The Fafnir is going to decide to help the good guys, not because he's a good guy, but because the enemy of his enemy is his friend. And that, it struck me, it stood out to me. I thought, that's awesome. I'm so pleased that is in there. I liked that. I thought it was great. I enjoyed it. good, twisty, turny novel. I can recommend this if you're paying attention to it. And you've got to read this one before you read book 2. And I think that I'm about to just love book 2. So there we go. Is that all I needed to tell you guys about? That might be it. Rex Draconis, the series, looks awesome and great, with lots of twists and turns. And, you know, since we're celebrating Appreciate a Dragon Day, appreciate Rex Draconis. Let's talk about some more dragon stuff here, okay? That's it. You guys, thank you for following along. Subscribe, like, do all that kind of stuff you're supposed to do with these channels. And we'll keep talking about dragons and fantasy and other good books here on the channel. Thanks so much for tuning in.